got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught to be afraid.
So, hello, we're from Dr. Shafiq's Interfaith Studies class. I'm Brittney. I was raised a Roman Catholic.
I'm Wendy. I was raised Christian.
I'm Harriet. I was raised Jewish.
And I'm Margot, and I was raised Episcopalian.
So today we thought we would discuss some of the topics and questions that were brought up in our class, and we have an advantage because we have a multi-generational audience here today.
So why is it, do you guys think that as generations go on, religion is valued less and
I think it's because there's so many outside things coming into the home that it overpowers religion study and practice, because we have more things to do than we ever had before.
Absolutely. Everything's changing, and with that, especially to me, what sticks out in my mind for our generation is technology. Like, kids love technology nowadays, and they're not interested in the values that was taught at home or rituals that are given, you know, a Sunday or a Saturday. They're worried about going out with friends or like going to a movie. I just don't think they focus on it as much.
I think also the fact that there is less focus on a family life and a family as a unit, that definitely affects the fact that religion is not as apparent as you would have seen, 50 years ago, say 30 years ago. There's a lot of change in family structure nowadays. It's, maybe one parent, maybe two parents, but it's still not as a tight-knit structure.
Harriet mentioned that before. That's what a church does, or a synagogue or a mosque. They bring the community together and they make it more of a family. And I said it's so hard for the younger kids and the younger generation to connect with that family and connect with that structure when they just have so many influences kind of pushing them to do other things. I think to go to a church or a mosque and to practice those traditional beliefs and values, they're not as enjoying or entertaining to young kids as it once was or believed to be.
Right, we talked about media, and I mentioned in the Christian faith, a lot of megachurches have come up recently. I know in the Rochester area we have Father's House, and it's a media presentation. When you go, there's laser light shows and there's live bands, and they're all trying to reach that generation who is inundated with media.
Yeah.
I think the generation can be reached more if we walk the walk, I think, instead of just talking. If we're preaching about and talking about helping others, then the children should be taught to help others. And once they get involved, it doesn't have to be a big project. It could be something small, like offering to shovel the snow from a neighbor's driveway, or asking someone, I'm going to the store, can I get something for you? But if we start teaching these values at home, then they grow, and they'll start seeing the faith and the importance of it.
I think that's one negative thing that could happen too, is the media that you just discussed. The media is so pronounced in our home now, TVs and cell phones and computers and laptops. All of that, like the news, newspapers, journal articles, magazines, it all is telling us bad things about society, the world, and its people. And I don't think, unless you have that family structure, unless you're doing, you're not just telling, you're doing, like you said, it gives them that opportunity to see more than the hate on the media and what's portrayed negatively through the media.
The media seems to enjoy showing bad things and making them bigger than they are, escalating them. Like this instance that happened in Canada was a person who had converted to Islam and then decided to wreak havoc in the parliament. And the newspapers just made it seem as if there was a terrorist gang coming around.
Okay.
And you can't blame a whole religion for one person going
Yeah. And I think,
berserk.
especially with a lot of Islamophobia today,
Mhm.
Yes.
media, to me, is one of the biggest reasons why there's so much intolerance and so much hatred towards that group and that religion. I think to me, what hits my mind is 9/11, you know. They don't even see just Muslims, they see Sikhs, you know. They see any religion or any spiritual practice that associates themselves with the Islamic faith as terrorists or as bad people. And by doing so, not only does America create like a belief against them, it also, you can never get over the struggle and get over the strifes of having that, I guess, grudge or that hatred towards one another, because that's all that's shown. And when that's all that's taught and that's all that's shown, you can't overcome that.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's really hard.
Today, I think in the United States, and without a doubt in other countries as well, but I think it is more apparent here that we have such a problem of stereotypes and generalizations, and that's why, think about all the Muslims that live in the United States, and when September 11th happened, and what happened to them? Well, they were blamed. Well, why were they blamed? They weren't there. They didn't fly those planes. So I think that's the big issue, is that we have such a problem with generalization and stereotypes, and we don't think about the fact that everyone is an individual, and not everyone is a bad person.
Not everyone's an extremist.
Exactly, exactly. In fact, the big thing to stress is that they are the minority in reality in the religion of Islam. Extremists are extremely small. They're a small population, so they don't even account for half of the people that are Islamic.
Well, I think that's true also in the Christian faith with the media and homophobia and abortions. The way the media spins it, anybody who attends a Christian church is totally against anyone who's involved with any of those types of groups.
And I think today it's hard because it's now one of the church's job to defend itself. When asked, how do you feel about homophobia or how do you feel about abortions, it's kind of their job not to only share, they can't share their views anymore. They have to straight defend why they feel the way they do, and that doesn't get anybody anywhere. I think it really only leads people to judgment. It only leads people to negative thoughts, and it doesn't give people the notion of what interfaith dialogue is supposed to do. Spread awareness and appreciate both the differences and the commonalities.
Mm-hmm.
And do it logically, dispassionately. And I think one of the things people have to do is probably dig a little more into their own religion, so when they talk to people about the faith, they can see that there are so many things alike, so many things that people have in common, that they can start understanding the differences as well as the commonality of religions.
Mm-hmm.
How would be the best way, or for you guys to think, to handle or discuss differences between an interreligious dialogue or interfaith dialogue?
So I think that it's kind of a difficult subject because in intrafaith dialogue or intra-religious differences, people assume, even people of that faith assume that, oh, we're all the same. You think the same way I do. But in reality, that's not true whatsoever. I mean, going back to what you were talking about as far as Christians and Catholics and, the thought that they're all homophobic or whatever you want to call it, in reality that's not true. So how do you get over those? Well, one, you have to be understanding of someone else's beliefs. It's just like interfaith dialogue where, somebody believes this, somebody believes that. You have to be able to be open-minded enough to want to learn why they think what they think. And because that's their belief, and you can't change that, nor should you try to change that. And you have your belief, and you shouldn't feel the need to change because somebody else believes that. So it's just, I think, the root of it is just being open-minded, being willing to learn. So I think that's a big deal.
I live in a neighborhood that has a lot of different faiths. My next door neighbors are Muslims, my neighbors across the street are Hindu. And I think one way to learn about others' religion and that is their holidays. I know my Muslim neighbors are always bringing me over really fantastic desserts to celebrate when they're celebrating some of their holidays, and that just is a great way to open up discussion. Like, tell me about your holiday, what is this all about? And a lot of times you say, oh, well, we have a holiday that's, similar, we do this, or maybe it isn't, but it's a nice way to open up dialogue, not just say, oh, thank you, this looks great, and close your door, but, oh, tell me about
Yeah.
I think
the
you learn
celebration.
not more, obviously you learn more about them, but I think you learn more about yourself and your faith as well. I think that when you start to explore other options and other ideas, you look and reflect deeper into your own. And I think that by spreading holidays, dinners, lunches, anything like that, spreading that kind of faith and those kind of ideas to each other can really help you explore your own in a sense that you want to do more.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you know that can go on, well, why can't you have dinners with other people? Or why can't you go out and do other things for other holidays? You just kind of get that sense to do more within your own faith, and I think that's really cool.
I think that was a large part of this class. It was the one thing I'm taking away, other than learning how to dialogue with others. But it did force me to look at my own faith and beliefs and why do I believe those things, and it does deepen your own faith.
Mm-hmm. And I always bring up the points you bring, but the intra-faith, you need to know your own before you learn others.
Right.
And to truly understand and to truly know your own, you can't just think of your own ideas and beliefs. You have to kind of get out there into other perspectives. And if you are a Roman Catholic, what are your ideas and beliefs similar to mine? And what's different?
That's right.
And why? And how can we appreciate those differences? And with that, start exploring into others. And I think that was a really good point.
Yes, it's important to know your own because you can't learn about others if you don't know what yours is about.
Yeah.
Because this way you can have more of an understanding of what other people do in practice.
Exactly.
Do it yourself.
Mm-hmm. So, do you guys believe there's a difference between Catholics and Christians? And if you do you believe that the ideas of one or the other are often considered the same for all Christians and Catholics?
Well, this came up during this class period with me when we were doing our anti-Semitism lecture. And Harriet confirmed what was said, and it took me completely off guard and shocked me that the Catholics blame the Jewish for Jesus' crucifixion,
Right.
for killing Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never been taught that in the churches I grew up in. That was never part of our upbringing. And I thought, no, that can't be. But it's like, oh yes, the Catholics feel very strongly about that. And it's like, but that's the Catholics, and I'm Protestant. That's not something that we both.
I mentioned that to my mom,
agree
actually.
on.
I mentioned that to my mom after the whole anti-Semitism project we had too. And that was her thing right away. She's like, yep, that's what the church believed in for a long time, Brittney. And she goes, up until, recently, as I started to get older, she goes, there was a shift. When I was younger, Jews helped crucify Jesus Christ. Now, it's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
to you, when you said, you're like, that's not true. I'm like, what?
I was like,
that's
where are
what
they
I
getting
heard.
this from? And Harriet was like, oh yes. I felt horrible. I thought, oh, that's what people think of me. That's not what I believe.
Yeah. And I think, and that's the problem too, is when people start generalizing.
Yes.
And it's not just Catholics, it's Christian and Catholics, it's the whole faith, and
Mhm.
Yes.
that's the big problem when people can't understand each other. And it's off those little miscommunications that create whole separations from
Yes.
people and groups. I think that's very detrimental.
I find it very interesting that you use the word miscommunication because I mean, think about interfaith dialogue. What is dialogue? Dialogue is communication.
What has always stuck with me, and that when I think of interfaith studies or interfaith dialogue and spreading awareness, is I took a class for Introduction to Anthropology, and it talked about spreading seeds of love and spreading seeds of compassion. And without spreading seeds of love and without spreading seeds of peace or ideas of peace, you will virtually get absolutely nowhere. With all the war that goes on today, with all the hateful ideas in the media and negative thoughts, it's hard to go over that or to get over that when you don't have anybody spreading awareness to share differences, and you don't have anybody spreading awareness to share that there can be peace among everyone. I think it's really hard to do that. I have one more question, and what are the personal benefits that you guys have received during this course of interfaith studies and interfaith dialogue? Start off.
I have found that when I compare some of the things, that there's so many things that are so similar in all of the religions, that if you just look at it, you can see that if you know your own religion, you can pick out things in other religions that's so much like your own that sometimes it's astonishing to realize that. So I think that's something that focused on me when we were talking about the other religions and other people.
I think some of the personal benefits that I've received from this class, I took Dr. Shafiq's 101 class, so you get the basic ideas of, interfaith dialogue, but also the basic ideas of different religions, so you learn a little bit of the background. And, then it's just deeply reinforced here, and but then you touch on more of the interfaith dialogue, and for me, I found it very useful, when talking to just about anybody. I mean, my parents, I had a actually fairly peaceful discussion about ISIS with my father, which is very scary that it was peaceful. Yes, politics is a hot subject in my family. Always has been, always will be. But it was nice to be able to have a reasonable conversation with him and to peacefully talk to him about how, maybe it's not all bad. We see a lot of the bad, and yes, I'm sure that, ISIS is not a very nice group, and me and my father definitely both agreed on that, but it was nice to be able to bring about the point that they're a minority, and, I stress that a lot, stereotypes and generalization, because in a sense, it drives me crazy. That's all you see, that's all you hear, and even for myself, it's hard to not stereotype, not to generalize. You have to really take a step back and think about everything that you say, because sometimes it's so easy for us to head right to that. So personally, it's helped me just kind of take a step back, think about exactly what I'm saying, how I respond to things, and it may not just be with religion, how I respond to things with people of different race or different cultures, or however, different people in general. So I think it's very useful.
One thing I gained from this class was, and I don't want to say I was oblivious or almost ignorant to it, but just how much intolerance is going on not only in our history but still today. And I think through the presentations, anti-Semitism, anti-Mormonism, Islamophobia, just as a few examples, those really hit home to me. And especially that video of the hijab and the girl where her friend was sitting there just saying all day long, you got to take that off, you look like a terrorist. And he's saying that in public because people are just walking by. The fact that nobody can stop, that astonishes me. Because if I just, and no matter, it didn't need to be my faith. If I heard anybody, judge or make rude comments or insulting, disrespectful comments to someone because of their beliefs or values, something needs to be said. Something needs to be spoke out, and if you don't speak out against that and you don't make awareness, I think it's really hard to overcome that struggle, to overcome those intolerances. And to me, That's a big problem in the world today. That needs to help almost get diminished, you know, and I think through interfaith dialogue and through spreading awareness and through spreading almost love and peace, you know, it can really help.
I think I mentioned earlier, just I think it helps you have a better understanding of your own. What I think coming into the class and thinking about interfaith dialogue and being ignorant to some respect to the fact this is not a conversion tactic. This is to learn about other faiths and to have tolerance for one another and to be able to discuss it and not worry about thinking that someone's trying to convert you to another religion. And I think there's a lot of stigma towards interfaith dialogue that is the goal behind it. So I think we learned a lot of techniques and a lot of ways to dialogue with others and to put that aside and put people's mind at ease, I would hope.
Yeah.
And to see people as individuals
Yes.
and not group them all together.
Not for what
in
they
one
believe.
package. Not everyone's the same. And if you have a dialogue, then you learn the differences and you can appreciate it.
Right.
So we have this song that you printed out for us that I'm going to read. It's in the show South Pacific. It's called You've Got to Be Carefully Taught. So, you've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made and people whose skin is a different shade. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8. To hate all the people your relatives hate, you've got to be carefully taught.